When I looked up, the guy moved his eyes from over my shoulder back to my eyes. Then I heard footsteps and looked behind me where he was looking and saw
Nightmare Files.
As a kid, I didn't always make the best decisions. When I was 14, my friend Bud told me he had a way that we could make money and wanted to know if I wanted to do so. I said yeah. His older brother supplied us with weed, so we would sell it at school. We lived in a very nice suburb on the outside of a big city. Anyway, we would make a lot of money, especially being that we were 14 and in the 9th grade. The rest of the school year, we made so much money we really didn't know what to do with it. The next school year, we were still selling, but not dime bags, more like pounds, because his brother moved on to hard drugs. We had become very arrogant because Bud bought a new car with cash, so we went everywhere, even the bad neighborhoods. One day, Bud told me to take his car and sell to this guy. This was probably the worst neighborhood you can go to by yourself, but I wasn't worried because I thought I was untouchable. I met up with a guy named Willie near a park. I got out and he got out. The park wasn't empty, maybe a few people, but no kids. We both spoke for a little bit, but he had a weird vibe. Everything he said was just one-word answers. So then it came time for the transaction. He asked me was I good. I said yeah. He asked me if I was holding, if I was strapped. I didn't know what he meant. He laughed and said, "Do you have a gun?" I said no. He then told me that he was grabbing the money out of his car. I told him that I'll get my stuff. We both got what we needed and we made our transaction. Then began to talk again and someone texted me. I looked down at my phone for a split second, then I looked back up. When I looked up, the guy moved his eyes from over my shoulder back to my eyes. Then I heard footsteps and looked behind me where he was looking and saw a hooded guy pulling out a gun. He was running towards me. I started running away. I couldn't run to the car because he was coming from that direction. He started shooting at me. I heard a cracking, buzzing sound go past my head. There were bullets. Then I ran through a yard. I tried to hop the fence and I felt a burning sensation in my hand as I scaled the fence. Then a burning sensation in my leg as I reached the front yard. I was shot in the hand and leg. Luckily, it was a cop posted on that street because the guy ended up running. He ended up going the opposite way of the cop as the cop turned his lights on and sped toward me. I ended up going to the hospital and my parents were pissed. I don't know if Bud set me up, or if that guy Willie set me up, or even if that guy tried to rob me because I wasn't from around that area. I definitely learned my lesson that day. I never did illegal stuff, and after that I tried to stay in the suburbs as much as I could. I just want to stay on the right track now because that was an eye-opener.
This happened 3 years ago. I moved out of my parents' house once I started making a steady paycheck. I'm a plumber, and one day I had to go to someone's house to fix some pipes. There was a married couple and their daughter living there. Their daughter was 22 at the time. She was 6 months older than me, and her name was Amanda. While I was working, she was talking to me, asking if I was single and stuff like that. And to be honest, she seemed pretty cute. We exchanged phone numbers and eventually started dating, and she even moved into my house. We were 3 months into our relationship, and stuff started to get out of hand. She was always getting mad and annoyed so easily. She always started arguments, and so on. This began to happen all of the time, even in public, which was incredibly embarrassing. One day I had enough and I had to break up with her, and I told her to leave and never come back. Amanda was pretty pissed off when I said that. I just ignored her. When she was packing her stuff, she finally left, or so I thought. After that day, she would always show up at my house, harass me, throw rocks at my window, and so on. I'd called the cops many times, but she was gone by the time they showed up. About a month later, when I came home from working, I would find her in her house, yelling at me to come back, or I'd find writing on my walls that would say, "Come back, or I'll kill you." The writing eventually went from pencil to marker, and then her own fucking blood. And Jess, I'm being serious when I said blood. That bitch carved my name a bunch of times into her arms and legs. She only got into my house because I forgot to take the house key back from her at the time. In hindsight, I'm such an idiot, I know. That psycho knew where my parents lived and showed up to their house during the night. My mom almost had a heart attack when she woke up to the sound of a knife being tapped on the window glass. When she woke up, she saw Amanda standing there, staring at her while psychotically smiling at her. Amanda did a lot, which really pissed me off, so one night I decided to stay overnight at my parents' house. It was about 2 a.m. when I heard a tapping noise in the window next to me. I turned and saw Amanda staring right at me. Her eyes were wide open and red. She had bags under her eyes and a huge smile. I went outside and started yelling at her to stay away from me and my family, but she screamed at the top of her lungs and charged at me with a knife. I punched her right in the face, which knocked her out. I called the cops and made sure Amanda didn't wake up while they were arriving. The cops came quickly while Amanda was knocked out. They found my house key on her, and she was arrested and eventually sentenced for a long while. After Amanda was sentenced, my parents and I moved out of state because we'd like to stay as far away from Amanda as we possibly can, because she will eventually be released.
I have a sister who got married when she was 18. She had a daughter named Susie. Her husband was unemployed. She had to work 2 jobs to support herself, her daughter, and her husband. Every day, she left the house at 8 a.m., and she only returned around 8 p.m. every night. Around this time, Susie had an imaginary friend. She told my sister it was a little girl named Jessica. Susie would talk about her all the time. My sister even overheard her talking to Jessica. It creeped her out, and after a while, she told Susie she was forbidden to talk about the girl. We weren't allowed to mention Jessica when we came over to visit. One day, Susie told her mom, "Jessica is mad at you because you don't believe she's real. She comes to play with me when Daddy closes the closet door after you leave, and he lets us out before you come home." My sister had no idea this was happening. Her husband was supposed to be watching Susie during the day. Instead, he would lock her in the closet with a box of cereal and leave her there all day. When my sister discovered what was going on, she kicked her husband out. The poor little girl spent so much time all alone, locked in a closet, that she had conjured up an imaginary playmate for herself. My sister divorced her husband and got custody of Susie. She decided to move out of the house they were renting. When the moving van came, the old man who owned the house came over to help them. He was talking to my sister and said, "I was always worried about your little girl on those basement stairs. My granddaughter fell down those basement stairs and broke her neck. She died in front of the closet down there." When she heard that, my sister got the chills. "What was her name?" she asked. "It wasn't Jessica, was it?" The old man looked at her and said her name was Jessica. She was only 4 years old. She couldn't say it properly, and how did you know that's how she said her name, Jessica? How did you know? My sister was in denial. She told him she didn't know what he was talking about. She refused to talk about it, grabbed the last of her things, and left the house for good. Even today, we're still not allowed to talk about Susie and her imaginary friend, Jessica. My sister remarried a few years later, and Susie got a great new stepdad. But Susie, when we speak alone, she always brings up that little girl and what she looked like. And it still creeps me out to this day, because I don't really believe in that type of stuff with ghosts and paranormal, but There's no way that Susie could have known about that little girl. But who knows? Maybe they are real, and maybe not.